So Jadon Sancho, what has happened to Jadon Sancho? If you remember a couple of years ago when Jadon Sancho signed for Manchester United, it was very much expected that he was going to be the future of English football. He was going to be the future of Manchester United, this young, upcoming footballing star who very much lit up the Bundesliga years prior to his rival at Manchester United with Borussia Dortmund. It was expected that this guy was going to be an absolute star in the making. We were seeing comparisons to Eden Hazard. We were seeing comparisons to many Manchester United greats, both through past and present. Everyone was very much expecting that Jadon Sancho would become the next big talent with Manchester United. And when you looked at his track record with Borussia Dortmund and you looked at how well he played with Borussia Dortmund, this was a guy that was more than ready to come into one of the biggest football clubs in the world, and he was ready to really light up the Premier League coming into Manchester United. In 104 appearances for Borussia Dortmund, the Englishman scored 38 goals in total, but most notably he scored 17 goals in the 2019-20 season, and in the 2020-21 season he scored 8 goals in 26 appearances. Jadon Sancho, very much an up-and-coming talent, and at his age and everything else, everyone very much expected that he would come into Manchester United and hit the ground running. Now, as we very well know in the Premier League, and as we very well know with multiple players, it can take time. Players can come in and they can struggle to get their feet in the door. It can take a year, sometimes not even 2 years before we well and truly see the best out of players. And I think with social media and everything else, that's something that we really forget. You think back to when Thierry Henry first came to Arsenal. He struggled to begin with. Dennis Bergkamp struggled with Arsenal in the early days. Plenty of players have struggled when they first come to the Premier League. You remember Mohamed Salah when he played for Chelsea. He couldn't get going at all, couldn't get into the team. And when he did play, he looked, far from brilliant. And this can happen with multiple players down the years. And there are so many examples of players who come to the Premier League that can take time before we really well and truly see the best out of them. Now, of course, that's not always the case. There's some players who come to the Premier League and just lit it up straight away. But it was clear to see from Jadon Sancho in his first season as a Manchester United player that it was going to take time. Obviously, making the move to Manchester during COVID and everything else, and with the fact that Manchester United were in turmoil very much from the moment Jadon Sancho came to Man United. I mean, just a couple of months into Jadon Sancho's arrival as a Manchester United player, the manager who signed him, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, had lost his job. Ralf Rangnick had come in. There was all sorts of problems behind the scenes, and it was a bit of a mess, and it was very tough for Jadon Sancho to establish himself as a regular Manchester United player. However, with the talent of Jadon Sancho, with the fact he's a young player playing in his home country, you figured it would be a matter of time before he really kicked into gear as a Man United player. But being brutally honest, it never really has happened. In that season, in 29 appearances, he scored 3 goals. First season, it can take time. There was a lot of problems with Manchester United in that season. Different managers, different styles. There was no identity about the club. They'd obviously brought Ronaldo back, who very much took a lot of the limelight as well. And there was a lot of issues going on with Manchester United. Going into the start of last season, I personally felt, and other Manchester United fans, I'm not a Man United fan, just to clarify, I'm a Liverpool fan, but from speaking with Man United fans, they were saying, this is a player that's going to click into gear. He's going to be at his absolute best this season, and he's really going to perform to the best of his ability. But as we saw again, it just never quite happened. And in 26 appearances, he scored 6 goals. Was nowhere near the levels, really, of Jadon Sancho. And look, in that moment, in that season, we've seen bright moments. We've seen sparks. We've seen the player that we very much expect that he could be. And we saw glimpses of what Manchester United fans wanted when they signed Jadon Sancho. And of course, with the fact that the guy is still only 23 years of age, and he was 22 years of age at various different moments of last season, you very much looked at it and thought, there's an asset there. There is a player there. It's going to take time. You just need to wait for him really to find his moments. But the more time has gone on, the more it's looked like he doesn't quite have it, does he? It looks like he doesn't quite have it for Manchester United. There's been multiple question marks over his training. Is he training properly? Does he have the right attitude? We've seen Erik ten Hag come out following Manchester United's defeat to Arsenal and very much say that Jadon Sancho doesn't have the right applications in terms of training. And then Sancho has very much responded almost immediately by saying that this is not the case and do not believe everything that you hear. So it's an absolute mess at the minute, and for a young footballer and a young player and a player with so much talent, even as a Liverpool fan, in some ways it's a shame to see what happened, because I remember even as a Liverpool fan seeing Jadon Sancho go to Man United and think, oh my goodness me, they've got an absolute gem there. And I was so jealous. I was thinking what a player he would have been to bring into Liverpool's attack. And you just wonder what has happened. How has it gone wrong? Is it the managers he's worked under aren't getting the best out of him? Is it other things? Is he not training right? Is it maybe he just needs to leave Man United? Maybe the pressure of playing for a football club isn't, suited to a player like him. Maybe there's personal issues. You just never really quite know. One thing we do know is that there is a player there. There is a talent there. We've seen it in Borussia Dortmund. At 23 years of age, he's got multiple years left in his career, and he's got more than enough time to turn this around. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, Erik ten Hag very quick to come out and say he's not training right and everything else. And sometimes this can have an adverse effect on a player. He can go into his shell. He mightn't come out. He mightn't want to play for Man United anymore. But sometimes it can go the other way. He'll have that siege mentality. He'll want to prove people wrong. He'll want to prove his manager wrong. And he'll want to show him that he is in fact the real deal. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And who is in the right, who is in the wrong. I don't really know. Obviously we need more information, and I think that's the most important thing. One thing we do know is that this is not the first time that this has happened with Jadon Sancho. There's been training issues in the past. There's been articles that have come out, whether they're right or wrong, about him training. He's been left out of England squads, and you'll remember even the Euros a couple of years ago, he couldn't even get into the team at different moments, and people were saying, why is Jadon Sancho not getting in the England squad? And there does appear to be a bit of a bad attitude at different times. But I do think that comes down to the manager, and it comes down to managers to really get the best out of certain players. And I think for Erik ten Hag, that is his job, to get the best out of a player like Jadon Sancho. And it's fair to say he hasn't got the best out of him. But what happens next, I'm not entirely sure. There is a player there, make no question about it. I think maybe a loan move in January wouldn't be, a bad move to another Premier League club where he could really find his feet, get regular game time. The pressure would somewhat be off, and he could really click into gear. Maybe a short-term loan before the start of next season, because he is a player, and there is a talent there, and he's still young. And I think Man United fans who are writing him off and everything else and saying he's a flop, he's this or he's that, look, it hasn't worked out for him so far, but you do have to factor in a number of things. He's worked under multiple different managers, 3 different managers in total, different styles with different managers, and it just hasn't quite worked out. The Premier League is a much more tougher, demanding league than the Bundesliga, in my opinion, and I think it's been tough for Jadon Sancho to really find his best and find consistency, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him now over the next couple of weeks. But do let me know in the comments down below, what do you think has happened to Jadon Sancho? He was one of the best up-and-coming talents when he was coming out of Dortmund, and since he's gone to Manchester United, his career has very much gone downhill. As I said, he still is 23 years of age, so he's got multiple years left to turn this one around, and you would say that this man is not even in his prime yet. But I do think maybe a change for Man United, maybe going on a loan in January, might maybe be the best thing for him, just to really reinvigorate and kickstart his career. I think once you go against the manager, and once there's that divide, that can be it. We've seen this happen multiple times down the years, and we've seen this happen with Ten Hag and Ronaldo. I think this situation is a little bit different with the fact that Sancho's a much younger player than Ronaldo, so there wasn't much to lose in getting rid of Ronaldo, in my opinion. I think it was silly what happened and getting rid of him in January in the way that they did, but I don't think they very much had a choice given what he had done in that interview with Piers Morgan. But Jadon Sancho is a young player, and there is potential there, where obviously Ronaldo, as we very much know, past his best years. I think that goes without saying. So there is potential there, and I think Man United do need to be careful with this, and I think a loan in January would be best for all parties. Loan him out to another Premier League club, maybe someone like a Nottingham Forest, a Burnley, someone like that, who can really get the best out of Jadon Sancho. And then, who knows after that, he could come back reinvigorated. And who knows, maybe there might even be a new manager by then, by the way things are looking at Man United at the minute. So, yeah, do let me know in the comments down below, what do you think should happen with Jadon Sancho? And what has happened to Jadon Sancho? Let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe. Chat to you all soon.